Hey plant besties! Happy June and welcome back to another episode of Seedling Sunday. I'm really excited to go over some new updates with you guys, show you how all the seedlings are doing, and let you know what we're doing as far as the garden goes and all of that. It's June, which means summer is finally here in Montana and it is time to really get the garden going and producing. The greenhouse is up and running and ready for me to start planting in it. Same thing with all of my garden beds. I've been working really hard this past week to weed everything and make sure it is prepared for all of our little seedlings to get planted in and grow beautifully. So let's talk about that and so much more on today's episode of Seedling Sunday. One of the projects that I was able to get done was getting a bunch of my bean starts potted up into this patio planter that I have here. It actually sits on top of my fence, and that way they get tons of sunlight throughout the day. I started a large variety of different beans, and I will end up adding a bunch of them to my garden when I am ready. As of right now, this is the only pot that I'm going to keep at my house that's going to have beans in it. All of the peas will be planted in my garden where they have a large trellis to climb up and grow. I started the majority of my beans in these little tiny sauce containers here with a couple of wet paper towels and stuck them under my grow lights, and this year this is actually how I started the majority of all of my seeds, and it seems to work really well. I did end up adding some gardening rope to this trellis here just to make it a little bit more sturdy and to give them something to actually climb up besides just the poles. I will probably end up needing to add an actual metal trellis for them depending on how strong they get, just because these little moss poles aren't super strong, but they are what I had on hand. It's really exciting watching the garden turn into an actual garden and watching all of these little guys grow and get super big. At the end of the video, you'll see the progress of this pot and just how big it's gotten. The other thing I was able to do was pot up some of my basils. This is a sweet basil, and then I also have a pesto basil that I added in as well. Basil is easily one of my favorite herbs to grow. Last year, I really kind of figured out the proper way to grow them and clip them so that they continue to grow and thrive for you. I have also found that basil doesn't like to get super dry, so I do try to keep mine a little bit wet, and I trim often because trimming them is going to promote more growth. And as always, what's really important is making sure that you label every single thing that you are putting out there. Personally, I forget what things are pretty easily, so I always want to make sure I label it. Also, I was able to pot up a couple of my tomato plants. They are finally big enough to add them to their summertime pots. Here, there's actually 3 in this little bundle. I am well aware that not all 3 of them are going to make it. I did end up clipping one of them, so there are 2 in this pot. But I think that they're going to grow just fine. We'll see how it turns out. So not only do I take care of my garden and my grandparents, but I do help to take care of their property. This aspen here last year was blown over in a windstorm, and so I've slowly been straightening it out so that it's not going to lean and grow over. I ended up needing to straighten out the T-post that it is attached to, so I went ahead and straightened it and tied it up, and at the end here, you'll see just how straight it is. The weather here can be very unpredictable and a little bit chaotic. Last year we had some really crazy windstorms that did a lot of damage to the property up here, and we definitely weren't expecting it. This tree, when it gets a little bit bigger, is going to provide abundant shade for my garden, as well as the wildflower patch that is just on the other side of it. I make sure to sprinkle some native wildflower seeds every year just to grow the little flower garden that I do have. Like I've said in previous videos, I did not get the flower gene like my mom and Nana have, but I do my best, and I find that wildflowers are kind of an easy way to get into the flower world. So as you can see, this tree is now a heck of a lot straighter than it was to begin with, so I make sure to tie it off real nice and tight, and I will continuously check on it throughout the summer. Here in Montana, we have actually been in a drought for quite a few years now. And with that being said, I try to collect every little bit of rainwater that I possibly can. Normally in May, we are getting dumped on every single day. We have an afternoon thunderstorm, and this year that did not happen at all. We have very sporadic rainstorms that are coming, but they're just little sprinkles for the most part. So I did decide to go ahead and set up one of my rain collection barrels here in my garden. This is going to collect all the rainwater it can, and then I'm going to be able to use it in my garden. So I definitely dropped the ball when it comes to my rhubarb this year. I did not pay close attention and it got all the way to bloom. So I'm going to go ahead and chop these blooms off and hopefully the plant will continue to reproduce for me. So how do I water the garden when I don't have a sprinkler head out here or a water pump? I'm gonna go ahead and show you. First thing that we do is we walk from the garden to the greenhouse. Now that we're in the greenhouse, we're gonna go ahead and attach the other hose. Move the water bucket under here. That way it'll catch anything that drips. Once I have the hose connected in the greenhouse, I then pull it across my raspberry bed and connect it to an even longer hose that leads out to my garden. This is why collecting rain is really important to me because this is honestly a lot of work to go back and forth all the time. So with the rainwater in the garden, it makes it so much easier for me to just water in there and I don't have to go through all of this work. The hose goes through these trees, down the bank, and up to the garden. For the last couple of weeks, I've been working really hard to make sure that the garden is prepped and ready for me to start planting all of my little seedlings in here. This includes going through and weeding all of the beds, turning all of the soil so that the nutrients are even throughout it, and weeding everything. I do go through and water the beds even though there's no crops in them yet to make sure that the dirt isn't hydrophobic. If the dirt is hydrophobic, the water is going to sit on the top layer and not penetrate down deep enough for those roots to suck up the water that it needs. So I go ahead and water the soil, then till it a little bit to make sure that the water is getting through all of it and it is not just sitting on top. You'll see in a couple of the next beds that I do that once I actually move that first layer of soil, it looks completely dry underneath it, which means that first layer is completely hydrophobic and no water is penetrating deep down. This bed that I am working on now is going to end up being my squash and pumpkin bed. Last year it was completely overflowing with the pumpkins that I grew, but unfortunately I planted them just a little bit too late, and so they didn't end up producing any pumpkins for me. The really hard part about living here in Montana is that our growing season is not predictable at all. This year we actually only have 105 days of actual growing season. Our last frost date wasn't until June 3rd this year, which it was the same last year, but that's pretty late. Usually you're able to start planting your garden at the end of May, but it has been going longer and longer each year. It's kind of crazy watching other content creators throughout the country or throughout the world who are able to produce their gardens almost year round. To me, that is absolutely mind blowing because here, over half the year, it is snow and frozen. This bed here is for my wheat, corn, and my carrots. I might end up throwing a few other little things here, but I'm not quite sure yet. I do have quite a few corn seedlings to end up planting. All of the corn seeds that I started ended up sprouting into little corn plants, so I have a bunch to plant. I have two different types of corn. I have black and blue corn. Again, corn is something that this high in elevation, I have struggled growing it. Last year, I ended up getting only 2 ears of corn, if you could even call them that. They were about the length of my thumb, and one of them only had 7 kernels on it. I'm not sure if the elevation is the only factor that plays into it. I'm guessing that the soil also does. So I did a little bit of research this year, and I'm going to do some things differently when I actually end up planting the corn. Right now, this garden really doesn't look like much, but if you give it a couple weeks to a month, I can promise you that it is going to look completely different and it's going to be worth all of the work that I'm putting into it, which is what I just keep reminding myself. My main goal is to be able to provide for my family and save enough for the winter so that we can use it throughout the year. I've recently learned how to can as well as dehydrate food and herbs to preserve them. It's really interesting to me to learn all these different techniques of preserving food because it's something that our ancestors needed to do in order to make it through the year. If they didn't preserve enough food, they simply were not going to make it. So, my entire goal, like I said, is to just continue to grow and produce as much as I possibly can. This is one of my many gooseberry bushes. It leads down into my raspberry bushes. I really like this area of my greenhouse here because it is super, super green, luscious, and produces like crazy. A lot of the raspberries are actually starting to bloom now, which means that very shortly we're going to have lots of little raspberries. We found a really good deal this week on dirt, $6 a bag. This year the prices went way up, so we went all out and got 8 bags. This is what the property is looking like right now, and as I promised you, everything is nice and green again. Doesn't stay horrible after winter very long. Doesn't take much for it to look beautiful. A bunch of the irises down at my greenhouse are blooming, along with the black eye Susans and just a few other flowers. Not a lot are opening up yet, but everything so far is looking really good. I really like these little white flowers. I'm not sure what they are, but I feel like they just add just enough. They're just enough for me. The strawberries are starting to bloom and open up, so hopefully we have strawberries real soon, and the boys are enjoying every day up at the garden. This is just another quick look at my raspberry bushes. This area here is kind of just left to its own device as far as how it wants to grow. I let it do what it wants to do, and I just help maintain it. The gooseberry bushes, believe it or not, already have some berries on them. So pretty soon I'll be able to pick those and preserve them. This year I plan on making some gooseberry jam as well as a couple of gooseberry pies. This week, I plan on planting a bunch of my seedlings at the garden. It's going to be an absolutely beautiful week. We're going to get close to 90 degrees here, which is pretty hot for Montana. So I'm going to go ahead and get everything planted and looking good in the garden. The strawberries here are also looking really good. I actually foraged for all of these plants. These are wild strawberry plants that I found throughout the property. My mint came back from last year. This is chocolate mint, as well as some chamomile and catmint. Thank you guys so much for all the love and support on my Seedling Sunday videos and my YouTube in general. If you guys like this video, I have plenty more for you to check out, and I'll catch you in the next one.